AVS Media Channel.
Papa Hotel Lima Echo November radio check.
Papa Echo November, good afternoon, read you 5.
Good afternoon, read you 5 as well, Papa Echo November.
The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Exonation, now this hour we're going to be speaking to J.R. Lankford about her book. It's a new and very interesting book entitled The Sacred Impostor. Now, let me tell you a little bit about J.R. before we get into the interview. In the 1900s, J.R. Lankford quit her former job, which involved jetting around the world to oversee the development of world standards for electrical products, to pursue a childhood dream of writing novels. She is the acclaimed author of the Jesus Thief series, which consists of The Jesus Thief, The Secret Madonna, and The Sacred Impostor, of which we're going to be speaking about tonight. About an attempt to clone Jesus of Nazareth using DNA stolen from the Shroud of Turin, landed by pioneer cloning scientist, the late Dr. Robert H. Foote of Cornell, and by Booklist in a starred review. The series has twice been opted for film. Translation rights to all three books recently have been sold to Portuguese, Russian, and Turkish publishers. A fourth book in this series, The Covert Messiah, is underway. She has written one murder mystery, Murder Without Motive, and joining me now is L.K. Lankford. And J.R., welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me.
All right, tell me, what was your inspiration for writing this series, and in particular, the book we're talking about tonight, The Sacred Impostor?
Well, science and belief have always been two of my twin passions. Belief in the sense of what people do, what we do because of what we believe. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I are both electrical engineers, so we follow science. And, well, I heard that there was really type AB blood on the shroud. That was in 1999, I think it was, when I first heard that. And that's a blood type that's not very common here in the U.S., but is, or in Europe, but is common in the Middle East.
That's right.
Specifically, yeah. So that was startling. And then when I heard that a scientist actually did run unauthorized PCR replication, which is a DNA sequencing test on the shroud blood. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe it, and I was off. I had the title of the first book, the concept just instantly came into my mind, and I was off researching immediately.
Well, let me ask you this. As you said, the type of blood found on the Shroud of Turin wasn't unusual for the Middle East. So why the big interest?
Well, because as you know, the Vatican owns it's a piece of cloth. It's 14 feet, and it has the image of a man front and back on it.
Right.
What appears to be a scourged, crucified man. So there has been a great deal of controversy about this shroud, which continues to this day, although recent developments are very interesting,
All right.
which I'll be glad to talk about. So
Okay, now,
fact that
JR, we've got to take a commercial break. Please stand by. X-Zone Nation, JR Lankford is our special guest this hour. Here's a website, www.jrlankford.com. That's www.jrlankford.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. J.R. Lankford is my special guest this hour. We're talking about the Sacred Impostor. J.R.'s website is www.jrlankford.com. J.R., what are some of the most recent findings when it comes to the Shroud of Turin? Because there's a lot of controversy around it, especially since the DNA or the true identity of the person that is depicted in the shroud has not been positively identified as Christ. In fact, many people speculate that why the church is so guarded of this cloth is that it is not, in fact, Jesus Christ, and that if it was proven not to be the shroud or the death shroud of Jesus, that this would add more controversy to the existence of Christ throughout the world.
Well, what's so interesting about this shroud is that if it's a medieval fake, I mean, the first record we have of its existence was like 1345, I believe. It ought to be darn easy to prove that. It ought not to take multiple scientific teams and multiple investigations. Think of the technology that existed in 1345.
Sure.
We are not able, no one has been able to exactly reproduce what this shroud and all the features of the shroud today. So there have been a number of scientific investigations. The one everyone's familiar with happened probably in 1978, and it concluded it was the real image of a crucified man. So then the question became, well,
who is
how
it?
did it get there? Yeah, who is it? You can never prove who it is.
Right.
But it ought to be easy to prove it's a fake, and that's what's so exciting about the very latest development.
You see, I don't dispute its authenticity of being the actual shroud of a person. I don't know why everyone believes it's Jesus Christ, especially since crucifixion was not unusual in that day and time.
Well, yes, but the details on the shroud are what's unusual. It just, first of all, everything that's described in biblical records of the crucifixion shows up on the shroud, and these were not commonly done to all criminals. Certainly not all people crucified had a crown of thorns put on their head. The flogging, the details of a flogging was there. There's a you can see where the blood flowed from the lance, something piercing the right chest. And very suggestive is the fact that all of the early depictions, the medieval depictions of Jesus on the cross, had him hanging from his hands. Well, the shroud shows that the wounds were not in the palm of the hand, but in the wrist. And only in recent years have we discovered that wrist nailing actually was the Roman practice, because the bones of the hand aren't strong enough to support a body.
But wouldn't it be to the advantage of the church to let an investigation proceed and prove that, in fact, that the probability of this shroud having covered the figure known as Christ was real, instead of them hiding it and not allowing scientific investigation to proceed to the fullest?
Well, I don't think they are hiding anything. I think they have cooperated. I think their concern is, just like the thing I mentioned, there have been a number of unauthorized things done. The most recent thing, to me, is the most exciting, and it has just been announced. Out of the University of Padua, a team of Italian scientists have concluded, and it was headlines just a week ago, the Turin shroud, the headline in the London's Telegraph is not a medieval forgery. So scientists have been saying this, and now they're saying it definitively. There's just no conceivable way with the technology that existed at the time that this could have been created as a fake.
But once again, I'm not, I don't think the dispute is coming from the world that it's a forgery. I think the dispute or the skepticism is that it's the shroud of death for Jesus Christ, the Christian Savior. I think this is where the controversy is coming from.
That it is. I don't think there's any way to prove that it is Jesus.
All right,
not in scientific terms.
All right. So if it's not being proved as the shroud that covered that was the death shroud of Jesus Christ, what's the significance of it then? Why all the hoopla?
Well, because because of the obvious possibility that it is. But to prove it is, you would need someone who's related to Jesus to get their DNA to match the DNA on the shroud to it, to prove it in modern scientific terms. It's never going to be possible to prove it in modern scientific terms. But what has been proven to my satisfaction and to many of many is that it's not a fake. There's just no conceivable way it could have been fake. So where does that leave us? Well, it's in a kind of a no man's land. You can't prove it positively, but you can't disprove it. So.
All right. See, I'm looking at it as a person who is rather rational, and I'm saying, okay, big deal. It's the shroud of someone who has died, who was crucified. Yeah. So what's the big hoopla about? Well,
the big hoopla is that some people say Jesus Christ didn't even exist.
That's true.
And so, I mean, there is a debate. I mean, there are different faiths and different religions around the world. Well, many do acknowledge that Jesus, or for instance, Muslims, what is the name they have for him? They believe Jesus Christ existed, but they see him as a prophet rather than the Son of God. So I think that it means a great deal to people of faith what science has to say about this shroud.
But when we look at the biblical authenticity itself, the Bible in itself leaves a lot to question as to its authenticity, as to the events actually happening. When you look at the Bible on the big score of things, we know the earth wasn't created in 7 days. We know that Adam and Eve were not the only two people that were able to propagate the entire world as we know it today. We know for a fact that Noah did not have two of every animal on his ark, if in fact Noah did exist. So why should we take this little thing, the shroud, and turn it into something fantastic?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb now and talk about my beliefs as opposed to, first of all, notice that Jesus Christ didn't say any of those things.
Right.
Those things are in the Old Testament.
Right, which was written by the book of Genesis was written by Moses. Okay.
So I think they're separate issues. Whether Jesus Christ existed and what he said and whether it has any relevance to anyone, I think is a separate issue about what the Bible, Old Testament, says about creation. Mm-hmm. And I certainly treated it as that in my personal belief system. But if you were to ask me what I think about what the Old Testament has to say, like I said, I'm an electrical engineer. I am a logical, reasonable person. Okay. But what I have observed is that science does not explain. What science does is it observes beautifully. It tests and records and gives us all this beautiful information, and it's so vast that we think we've got an explanation. Like last week, they discovered the Higgs boson. They called it the God particle. Mm-hmm. Except where did the Higgs boson come from? It can't be the God particle. It had to be created from something. So, I personally don't believe that science and belief are as incompatible as many people say they are.
Well, if you don't believe part of the Bible, how can you believe another part? It makes no sense to me. It's either you're a believer or you're not.
Well, some people say that. I don't agree. I think, first of all, there are historical records to support some of the Jesus story, right? And other parts of it too. I think I don't agree that you must believe the whole Bible to believe any of it. I personally don't believe that.
Well, we know for a fact Christ wasn't born on December the 25th. We know that this was an early attempt by the Romans and the early Christians to take control of the religion that was losing ground vastly to the pagan rituals. And it's exactly. It seems that throughout history, Christianity has been a big marketing game. When you look at the establishment of Catholicism, let's call a spade a spade. The Pope is the CEO, the cardinals are the board of directors, and everyone who goes to church on Sunday, they're the stockholders.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, most religions, as they are organized, are social institutions. Yep. In addition to whatever their belief about God is, they're certainly social institutions, and the Catholic Church is the most successful social institution we call a religion.
So far.
And it's also clear that the Romans did do exactly as you said. Yep. They used Christianity to control the populace at the time. And I believe, my personal belief again, is that in doing that, they helped create the Bible. They threw out parts of it they didn't like. That's
exactly.
Good for controlling people. And, created something for an intent other than belief in God.
Okay, stand by, JR. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, J.R. Lankford is our special guest, www.jrlankford.com. And she's the author of a book entitled The Sacred Impostor. We'll be back on the other side of this news break with some fine words from our sponsors as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
I don't care what they say, Jesus is just all right. Oh yeah, Jesus is just all right.
Hi, this is Rob McConnell, and I invite you to join me on Turquoise Radio for the X Zone Radio Show, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. After 21 years of paranormal TV and radio, thousands of celebrity interviews, and millions of worldwide supporters, I am very excited to bring my show to Turquoise Radio, where together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal to the science of parapsychology and all topics in between. Check out the website at turquoiseradio.com for showtimes. The X Zone Radio Show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, on Turquoise Radio. And I'll see you in the X Zone. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com.
I saw a garage sale pulled up in the yard. Found a statue of Jesus that was 8 feet tall. He held out his arms and it seemed all alone. So I loaded him up and I drove him home. Out by my driveway he looks down the street. Long hair and sandals made of reborn concrete. I painted him white with a long purple robe. He's a rocker of ages on our gravel road. He's an 800-pound Jesus, standing taller than a tree. He's an 800-pound Jesus, a bigger man than you or me. I thought losing my job was the end of the world, till my best pal ran off with my best girl. I felt suicidal with no real friends, so I walked outside with a rope in my hand. Out by that statue there's a big oak tree, so I stood on his shoulder.
Welcome back, everyone. My guest this hour is J.R. Lankford. Her website is www.jrlankford.com. And we're talking to JR about her book entitled The Sacred Impostor. Tell me more about your book and the characters. Are the books and the characters based on fact, or is it totally fiction?
I've tried to make these stories as authentic as possible in every respect that I can, because they do have a fanciful premise. Mm-hmm. With technology as it exists today, it is not possible to clone the blood that's on the Shroud of Turin. Who knows what will happen in the future? Mm-hmm. But this premise is, I think, so interesting to so many people. And human cloning is so important. I mean, there is a scientist right now who is actively trying to clone both the living and the dead. There are two, in fact, and may have succeeded for all we know. So this is something society will have to grips with. So in the first book, I wrote it in such a way that when you close the book, you understand exactly what cloning is. And I created characters in terms of the faith side of the story that represent who we really are. My quote-unquote mad scientist, Felix, is a brilliant man with 2 Harvard PhDs. And I asked myself, why would he do this? Mm-hmm. So I remembered a story that I'd read about a priest who discovered his parents were Jews, and the trauma this caused him. And so I used that theme to create Felix's background, and he is always dreamed of examining the Shroud of Turin, and his dream is coming true. And as it is, he gets a call from his sister in New York and discovers their parents were really Jews who escaped Nazi Italy. And in religious turmoil, he snips the blood and brings it back into New York in order to undo this crime, as he calls it. And so then for the other character, he represents science or mind in the book. And the other characters, there's a woman who represents faith, just faith. She believes God watches over her. And then there's another major character who represents the world. You know, he's a good guy, but he's not into God. And thinks the world can be an unfair place at times, and he does his best not to step on anybody, but doesn't sweat it, you know?
Gotcha.
So through these characters, I try to explore, you know, who we are in how we live in the world, what we do because of what we believe, and how the world would react if this actually happened, if someone succeeded in cloning.
Do you think that we actually need to get into cloning? Do you think cloning is going to be a hazard or a stumbling block for society?
Well, yes, I think it's absolutely going to happen, and I think it may have happened already in secret. The trouble is that I think it's unfortunate that the science has been driven underground. There has been such hysterical reaction, not just from the media, but from government. When anyone announces, "Oh, I think we've got a clone pregnancy," the last time it happened here in the U.S. down in Florida, the government tried to take custody of the child, and of course, from the parents' point of view, this is their child. They don't want that to happen. So there's so much chaos around it that if a clone were produced, we may not know. So it's all happening in private.
But what would be the
and whether it should or not,
Yeah.
you know, I personally have mixed feelings because there are dangers, which I explain in the book. You know, medical dangers. And then there's the whole question of identity. You know, who is this person? You know, you could say, okay, they're a twin. I mean, there's so many complex questions that are raised by it.
Do you think that men are now trying to replicate God himself? They're trying to play God?
Well, we've always been doing that, I think. You know, my personal... What do you mean, in what respect?
Well, isn't it only God who creates? And if man creates, then we have become gods, and we have no longer a need for God or any of his teachings.
Yes. Well, I personally am a believer in this extent. I believe there is a force we call God, and I believe it's benevolent. Let's hope. But also, one of the things I'm writing in the series I'm writing, in the book I'm writing in the series now, I'm exploring some of Jesus's messages in the Bible, and they're not just in the Bible. They're in fact in every religion, not just in religions. You can open philosophy books and find them. The concept that we are co-creators of life with God, because Jesus did say the kingdom of God is within you, and he said it many times. So I'm exploring, okay, what did he mean by that? What does that mean? But I'm exploring it in a real-world story.
I'm just taking a thought here. Let's get back to the very crux of the entire argument. Do we need to actually clone? What will be the advantages? We always hear about the disadvantages. What are some of the advantages?
Well, for some people, it's a very personal and very, you know, one of the people who this Dr. Panov, I think his name is, one of his clients, had lost a child, and it's online, this photograph of this beautiful baby girl. So the parents are in grief, you know, they want that child. You know, now whether they can get, whether what they get will be that child or just a twin or what, that's open to all kinds of debate. But that is what drives most of the people who attempt this. And there are also people who can't have children, but they don't want to adopt. They want to have a biological heir, so they clone themselves. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other things that could come up, which society needs to be worried about. Or when this happens, we need to talk about this. Are we going to allow somebody to take some of Einstein's hair and clone him? Well, what about Stalin? So it raises all kinds of questions for society, and it just fascinated me, and that's why I wrote this first book. Now, in the later books, what I've done is each book continues the story where the last one stopped, but I use it as like a canvas to take the characters to a different country, introduce new characters and new themes. And the current one, has a Mexican theme, and it explores the Virgin of Guadalupe tradition. I was fascinated to learn about the Mexican art of curanderismo. That's their ancient healing art. And so I have a curanderisma in the book. And, of course, the current issues that we're dealing with of what so-called illegal immigration and all that means for the people who come here and for those who already live in the United States. So I've used that new canvas, as I said, for this fourth book.
I'm looking at the titles of your book, The Jesus Thief, The Secret Madonna, The Sacred Impostor. What is The Jesus Thief about?
The Jesus Thief is the first book, and that's the story about stealing those threads from the Shroud of Turin.
Okay, now let's go to the next book, The Secret Madonna.
Well, that picks up the story 10 years later. And we're in Italy, and we have a mother and child. And so we learn the story of the child who is cloned and what happens, how the world reacts to him. So that's what happens in that book.
Do you think that it's possible that when it was written in the Bible, the second coming of Christ, they were actually talking about a futuristic look into the world, and that the second coming of Christ would be him being brought back through cloning?
Well, I think it's entirely... the first coming of Christ, it was kind of a cloning, because you had a woman. It's exactly really parallels the science of cloning. I found that so interesting. You had a woman and her egg, and something was implanted in her egg that was not her, did not, come from a human, anyone she mated with. Well, the same thing happens in cloning today. You must have a mother, and there's an egg, and then something else is implanted in her egg in a way.
Now this is if you believe the story as it's told in the Bible. But what happens if hypothetically,
yes,
if Mary was actually had a sexual encounter with Joseph being an older guy and Mary being a younger girl, they had to do something, and they concocted this entire story. And what would happen if the entire story about Jesus Christ was nothing else but a cover-up to hide a very illicit, promiscuous affair?
Well, whether that happened or not, what's interesting about Jesus is the later stories of what he said and what he did.
But if you take the perception that the conception may have been a lie, then everything else pertaining to that story would be a lie as well.
Well, no, because, it depends on who was telling the story, because Jesus wasn't born. He himself may not know how he was born. So he cannot, attest to that personally, unless he actually was the Son of God. For instance, I find tremendous parallels between what Jesus actually said in the Bible, not the whole rest of the Bible, but especially what Jesus actually said. And a great deal of what we call New Age thought today. For instance, every time Jesus healed, just about, I don't think there's an exception, he said, your faith has healed you, which implies it's possible to heal your body, yourself, just by believing you can. Well, today we call that the placebo effect. Every day, science, they've just given it a name so they don't have to think about it. Well, what is the placebo effect? But a demonstration that the body is able to heal itself. We are able to heal ourselves.
Or is it just a matter of mind over matter?
Mind over matter, yes, I think so. I really believe much of what is considered out there thinking is tomorrow's science. Because, when Newton discovered gravity, they accused witchcraft and said dabbling in the occult.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our final break. Exonation, J.R. Lankford is our guest. www.jrlankford.com. Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. Tell me what you think. Is it possible that the Bible itself is nothing else but one big fairy tale? We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Long purple road, he's a rock of ages on our gravel road. He's an 800-pound Jesus, standing taller than a tree. He's an 800-pound Jesus, a bigger man than you or me.
She was driving last Friday on her way to Cincinnati on a snow-white Christmas Eve, going home to see her mama and her daddy with the baby in the back seat. 50 miles to go and she was running low on faith and gasoline. It'd been a long, hard year. She had a lot on her mind and she didn't pay attention. She was going way too fast. Before she knew it, she was spinning on a thin black sheet of glass. She saw both their lives flash before her.
Exonation, J.R. Lankford's our special guest this hour, www.jrlankford.com, and she is the author of the Jesus Thief series, and once again, www.jrlankford.com. Just before we get back to JR Exonation, don't forget the X Chronicles newspaper is now available at www.xchronicles-newspaperstand.htm. First of all, JR, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us tonight and sharing the controversial story about the Shroud of Turin and how you've been able to spin it into a modern day fictional account. Why did you do it out of fiction instead of making it into a novel?
Well, it is these are thrillers, and that's just the writer part of me. I love spinning a story of suspense and danger, getting my characters back against the wall. So that's what they are, and I've used that genre to also explore themes of religion and science.
Now, I understand you have another book that's in the works. Tell me about it.
The Covert Messiah, it's called. Well, in this novel, it came about because I don't know if you said the last producer who optioned this Jesus Thief for film, for a Hollywood film, asked me why wouldn't I write a book about the Jesus clone interacting with the world as an adult. And, of course, I'd been ducking that for years because I didn't feel competent to write Jesus.
Okay, we're running out of time very fast here. Can you tell me about the book, please?
Oh, well, that's what it's about. And I started meditating by coincidence when at the same time he suggested that, and inspiration just came.
All right,
so
JR. Yeah, all right. We've run out of time for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about J.R. Lankford, visit her website at www.jrlankford.com. That's www.jrlankford.com. Tell me, X-Zone Nation, are you a believer or are you a skeptic when it comes to Jesus? That's the question of the day. Send me an email. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you believe and why you believe in what you believe. We know for a fact that the Bible was written by man. We know for a fact that the authors sometimes had a habit of embellishing the facts. We know that Christ wasn't born on December the 25th. We know that Adam and Eve were not the only two people on earth. We know for a fact that Noah didn't have two of every animal on the planet in his ark, if in fact Noah really did exist. Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. That's xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back on the other side of the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, with yours truly, Rob McConnell. 1-800-610-7035 is our toll-free number. My email address, one more time, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. This is the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. I'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away.